Eternity is the whole, simultaneous, and perfect possession of boundless life. Whatever therefore comprehends and possesses at once the whole fullness of boundless life, and is such that neither is anything future lacking from it, nor has anything past flowed away, that is rightly held to be eternal, and that must necessarily both always be present to itself, possessing itself in the present, and hold as the present infinity of moving time. Two things characterize eternity. First, anything existing in eternity is unending, that is, lacks both beginning and end, for both may be regarded as ends. Secondly, eternity itself exists as an instantaneous whole, lacking successiveness. Most people think of eternity as endless time or forever. Actually, eternity is a description of the life of the infinite source of our existence, God. God is. There is no beginning, no end, no past, no future, no increase or decrease of knowledge in the living fullness of perfection that is God. As Boethius put it in his classic description of eternity, God's eternity is the utter and complete possession of life without end in one simultaneous act. Everything, every being, every time is present to God in one infinite act without beginning or end. Present to God not simply as something God knows about, but as something God brings about in an eternal act. God knows as creator, not observer. Coming closer to home, God knows every instant of your life from all eternity, not just billions of years ago, but always. So how can you get your head around this? Well, just imagine seeing a video biopic at the moment of your birth, your biopic. You see each instant of your life to come, the people you know, friends, family, everyone, your choices, actions, interactions, failures and successes, ups and downs, crises, accidents, traumas, habits, pain and suffering, encounters with evil and goodness and love. You see all phases of your life, baby, teenager, young adult, middle-aged, old. Imagine also that this tour of your life continues to the next stage, to your life after death, a life that continues without end. All this sounds impossible because none of the events or experiences shown have happened yet. You can't see what doesn't exist yet. But we are talking about your capabilities here. How about something or someone who is outside space and time? Someone who created all things and sustains them in being. Someone without beginning or end. God. God knows as inventor and creator, not as observer. God created all things from absolute nothingness. God also keeps all things in being. Space and time, laws of nature, minds, energy. None of these, or anything else for that matter, would continue to exist if not for the underlying eternal divine will. And all that is created is, as a whole, eternally known to God. Since God knows all space-time in one act, His knowing and willing has to be both spaceless and timeless. The relationship between God's eternity and the space-time of creation is not one of two parallel series of events, but between an infinite mind and its eternal, unchanging knowledge of a finite reality that it creates and conserves in being. As its creator, the creator in fact knows every instant of the life of its creation, from all eternity and for all eternity. In short, God the Creator knows each moment of your life, here and hereafter, not just eons before you were born, but from forever. In your book, all are written down. My days were shaped before one came to be. In fact, your whole eternity is known to God from all eternity. But how do we know this to be the case? Well, we will see with the God algorithm why eternity has to be the case. Eternity becomes inescapable once you understand the mysterious but indisputable fact that you exist. The primordial religions and the greatest thinkers and mystics of the golden age of human thought were indeed unanimous on this fundamental issue. The source of our existence has no beginning or end and no limitation of any kind. But how can God do this? How can He know something before it has happened? simply because there is no past or future for God, but only an all-encompassing present. As the primordial religions proclaimed, God's name for himself is I am. The reality of God's transcending the past, present, future framework also makes sense of the universal phenomenon of precognition. Precognition is the experience that multitudes of people have had of seeing the future. Throughout all ages, such people have known about some future event, for instance, a death, and the manner in which it takes place well in advance of its occurrence, days and weeks and even years before. How is it possible for someone to know about an event that has not taken place yet, about situations that do not even exist yet? Since, through divine action, they can really know what is future to them, this means that the framework of their time series is not absolute. Mysterious it might be, but it makes sense once you understand God's eternity. The upshot is that your life here and now and in eternity is always known to God. Consequently, there are no coincidences. The plan and providence of God may be thought of as eternity embedded in time. Divine knowing measured by eternity sees whatever takes place in time not as future, but as present. God's insight comprises all things from eternity, according as each thing is in its presentness. Thomas Aquinas. Time measures finite things that change, while eternity is the measure of what does not change because it is infinitely perfect. How does eternity relate to time? Well, time came to be when the world was created, but creation itself did not take place in time. Time is a property of creation with its constant change and its not timeless, unchanging creator. God's creation of the world is a single, eternally known act of both creation from nothing and constant conservation in being. Time and history are simply part and parcel of the interacting web of causes and effects, agents and acts, events and processes that constitutes creation and that is known eternally, not before, during, or after, by the one who is transcendent, timeless, and infinitely perfect. God knows and wills the connection of remote and immediate causes to their effects. He knows the whole structure of cause and effect, of free choices and acts. That makes up the universe and its history. But the entire space-time web, the histories of the universe and humankind are not concurrent with eternity, with God's transcendent being. Eternity contains time, in the sense that the world of cause and effect, of change from one state to another, is brought into being and is kept in being by the self-existent to whom all is present, in one eternal act. Past, present, and future tenses do not apply to God. We can only say that He knows and wills eternally. God does not know the future simply because nothing is future for God. Rather, God knows what is past, present, and future to us timelessly, from all eternity. We cannot speak of God as existing before time because before suggests that God has a chronology in which events, like, for example, the beginning of time, take place in a sequence. Does God's eternity mean that time is just an illusion? No. Inevitably, God's eternal will is experienced in terms of time by those who are time-bound. Your experience of time is not an illusion, and certainly you shouldn't think that God doesn't know your experience for what is reality. God timelessly sees the things of time as being in time. This implies neither that they are not actually in time, nor that their time-bound nature affects the timelessness nature of God's knowledge of them. If God knows what will happen, is human freedom possible? Yes, because God not only knows your acts of free will, but makes possible your acts of free will from all eternity. He holds us in being as actors, making our free acts. We cause our acts, and God causes us to be acting persons. Eternity is not simply timelessness. To say that God is changeless and eternal is not to say that God is static. On the contrary, God is infinite energy and activity, but his activity does not involve increase or decrease, since in God there is no limitation, no movement from a lesser state to a greater one. Although the gulf between time and eternity is infinite, as inventor, creator, and sustainer, God's relation to the world is yet the most intimate imaginable. He loved them into being and sustains them constantly.